Hello. So we are now moving on to getting some input as well as output from our Hello World program. So leaving off from the last short tutorial, we have a try with resources that expects a certain output, Hello World, with an exclamation point followed by an end of line from executing a run program, and then here's our run program that prints out the Hello World. So here's a nice tested Hello World program where a certain output is expected. Once that expected output appears, if things pass, that is the run executes correctly down here, then after the try with resources, this temporary check against resource is closed off, and that's very safe because even if things go wrong, you will still correctly close off that resource. So that's great for output. So now I'd like to do an input. So I'm going to change my run program a little bit and ask for a name and say hello name. So println ask for a name and then get that name. Strings are the way that Java thinks of sequences of little characters, like the stuff like hello world in quotes that you see right there. So this time we're going to get some string from the user, and I'll use read line to get that string. So this, now let me just print out a prompt instead of print line a prompt. So print out a prompt, get the name, and then instead of printing out hello world, that is what's called a literal string, so it's something that doesn't change every time. We'll go ahead and create a string by concatenating, and plus is how you concatenate strings in Java. So now it'll be hello, comma space, and then whatever the user types in here by typing some set of letters and then pressing enter, it'll concatenate that into that message, put an exclamation point at the end, and send that out instead. So, so what's interesting then, of course, is if I try to test that, well, I can't have the same string coming out every time because, of course, well, that's not going to be how this works out. So I'm going to turn off this test just to show it running without the test. And so this is how it would normally work. If I type a name, it'll just say hello Ada now because that's the name I put in there, hello Ada. So how can I test that kind of thing? So two things, I suppose. One is the message is no longer the same every time. It depends on what the user types. And so I can't just have sort of a fixed string here. So let's make a better test. So we need some sample input as well as checking against some sample output. So I'll create some sample input in this case, and that if there's an out expect, then there's going to be an in supply. I'm sorry, in provide. To try close now some input file, out in provide, in this case, some name followed by an end line, and then what we expect to come out in this case is name. That's interesting, followed by that, and what name is it? So tests should not, automated tests should be automated, that you shouldn't involve any user interaction. So I shouldn't just make another prompt for that name. In this case, I will just create a choice for what that name should be like. So name is Ada. I'll provide that name followed by an end of line to my program, and then if I provide that name, then I should expect hello that back, and run that, and we're missing a block here. So provide some input to our example program, and then run that program and get that, hopefully get that output correct. When I'm expecting things in here, there's actually an extra thing in this one of output, right? Print statements are output. So this print statement here is part of the output of running this thing, and I have to match that in here. So really the total output, notice there's not a print ln, it's just a print. So in the end there's a print, and the space shows up. Then there's an interaction with the user. That's when the provide part starts playing a role and filling in the blanks for what the readlin will give. Is whatever name I put up here will get provided along with an end of line. So that is input, which is part of the provide business. And then the next bit of output is this println hello, the space and the name. I mean, in the end, I am just reproducing the remainder of the string, but that in fact should be the total output that I expect from running this program, provided that I provide that particular input. So that seems like a nice test. Oh, and now we should actually test it. So turn it back on and go. There we go. So it now did the test run, and now when it does run, it's going to ask a name, and I can give a different name. So this is now the interactive thing. I can put any name I want. So Alice. So now it says hello Alice, and before that tested against Ada, and it ran against Alice, but this now is an example of both providing certain kinds of input to a little thing you would like to test, as well as expecting a certain kind of output. So this is a nice try with resources way of providing those resources or expecting a certain output and making sure that those get cleaned up once these tests are done. And I suppose that's the whole thing. So you have to provide some resources and expect some output. If you're trying to read data from a test, you have to provide that data somehow, and you do also have to expect the other information such as prompts in your output, as well as the more standard output. So basically all the print statements here have to be reflected in your expects, and all the read lines and reads, read ints, and those sorts of business has to be reflected in your provides. So that gives you a nice quick way to test an input, and a little process that requires input and has output with try with resources.